So I'm going to introduce the rapporteur, who will take us through the summary of the last few days. So Dr. Johannes Fasika is the rapporteur. I'm having a small issue with my phone, frozen. So Johannes Fasika has a BSc in electrical engineering from Alabama University and an MSc. Apologies, I can't see half of my screen. In telecom engineering from, thank you. In telecom engineering from Graduate School of Telecommunication and Information Technology. He has 2 decades of work experience in telecommunication and information technology. His areas of expertise include fiber optic networks and information system audit. As a part-time consultant, he writes proceedings of local events, and as such, served as a rapporteur in several high-profile events, including the first Ethiopian Internet Forum. I would like to welcome him to the stage to give us the summary of the last few days.
Good morning once again. My name is Johannes Fasika, as introduced. I'm the rapporteur of this event. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a highlight of the last 2 days of the event. The event was full of informative presentations and panel discussions. All of the sessions are recorded and are available online. So whatever is missed from my recaps, you can watch online. Let me proceed. So one of the thematic areas covered by during the conference was digital strategies. We had a panel discussion that discussed the continental digital transformation strategy and the Ethiopian digital transformation strategy. The first one was the African digital strategy presented by Ms. ምህረት Wood-Matas. These are the action points she forwarded. Some of them are nations should increase investment in digital transformation. Also, she suggested harmonization and integration of regulatory frameworks. And she emphasized the need to invest on digital skills and encouraging innovation and entrepreneurship, and also enhanced collaboration among African countries. The next was a presentation by Dr. Abiot Bayo. It was about the Ethiopian digital transformation strategy. So these are the major highlights. One of the striking points mentioned by Dr. Abiot was that digital transformation strategies are not standalone strategies by themselves. They are more of a continuation of nations' development strategies. So Ethiopia's major accomplishments regarding digital transformation include improvement of infrastructure, enacting legal and regulatory frameworks, and facilitation of coordination among various institutions, as you can see. But there are a lot of challenges that still persist, including limited digital skills, access disparities, bureaucratic hurdles, which are mainly because of attitudinal problems and financial resource problems. In the ensuing question and answer session, these points were highlighted. The need to build cross-border infrastructure for the realization of the African Free Trade Area Agreement, dealing with these attitudinal problems or bureaucratic issues, addressing the device affordability issue, digital skills development, and monitoring of digital transformation strategies. So Ms. Mehret suggested that African nations must be more cooperative in reporting their progresses regarding their status in the implementation of the digital transformation strategy. Another thematic area was regulation for connecting the unconnected. It was one of the parallel sessions of the first day. So there were the presentations. Well, one of the presentations was regulation to connecting the unconnected in the IGAD region by Ms. Mavis. As you can see, internet penetration, broadband subscription, and rural connectivity in the IGAD region is very low. So challenges faced in terms of infrastructure, regulatory barriers, and economic constraints. Focusing on the regulatory barriers, these are mainly on complex licensing issues, lack of policy harmonization, and bureaucratic inefficiencies. So in addressing these barriers, the following were suggested: unified licensing framework for simplified licensing procedures, regulatory sandboxes to test new technologies and build regulatory capacity, technology neutrality and spectrum management for fair competition, infrastructure sharing among telecom operators so that we can lower cost of deploying new infrastructure, universal access and service taxes, universal access and service and tax incentives, and multi-sector regulation to improve efficiency. The other regulatory considerations suggested by the presentation were public-private partnerships, agile regulations, and harmonization of regional policies. And also other important considerations were internet exchange points to reduce cost of local internet traffic, to improve internet speed and reduce latency, community networks for localized solutions, and adopting regulatory frameworks and strategies to manage spectrum. The other presentation was by the Deputy General Director of the Ethiopian Communication Authority. So he introduced the regulatory framework in Ethiopia. So the key highlights of the presentation were the introduction of the telecom liberalization in Ethiopia as enhanced expansion of telecom access, and the legal and regulatory frameworks of the telecommunication sector have direct correlation with the enhancement of connectivity in Ethiopia. And one of the interesting points is that telecom operators have coverage obligations for voice, text, and very high speed broadband service. And there is also a universal service fund. The source of these funds are levies and donations. And the money collected from the operators is distributed through reverse auction mechanisms. However, there are still key challenges to connectivity, including road accessibility, lack of power in rural areas, and lack of digital literacy. The other presentation in this thematic area was regulation in Kenya, specifically on community networks in Kenya. These are the key takeaways. The only African countries that recognize community network service providers are Kenya, Uganda, and Lesotho. So in expanding these community networks, governments are the key catalysts. The involvement of multiple stakeholders is a key pillar. Investment in research and development is also important, and the decentralization of data centers has been emphasized to enhance last mile access. The other interesting presentation was the connecting the unconnected in the Brazil ISP Association. As you can see, the number of internet service providers in Brazil is astonishing. There are 21,000 internet service providers. Actually, all of them are not big ones, but there are 21,000 internet service providers, and these, most of them are small operators, and these small operators are a big reason that Brazil is rapidly moving forward in the digital inclusion. So what enabled these small operators to flourish is the innovative regulatory model followed in Brazil, specifically the asymmetric regulation, meaning regulatory burdens are eased for small operators than on the bigger ones. In the question and answer session, the following these points were discussed: establishing regional regulators association for uniformity and standardization, building internet exchange points, the trade-off between promoting community networks and local ISPs, meaning the trade-off between the commercial side of things and the social service side of things, infrastructure and local data centers, and asymmetric regulations. The other parallel session of the first day was digitization of the financial sector in Ethiopia. One of the presentations was digitization of the financial sector. So these are the key takeaways. Ethiopia has made significant strides in terms of digital financial sector. So one of the key points is collaboration between government, financial institutions, and fintechs is essential to tackle challenges in the financial sector. Focus on accessibility is key, and leveraging data and analytics for better decision making will take the financial sector to the next frontier. Another presentation was about fintech startups and companies. As you can expect, internet plays a major role in fintech startups. However, the fintech industry in Ethiopia faces challenges including regulatory compliance, cybersecurity, and customer trust. So the new financial technologies like blockchain and cryptocurrency offer a fast and secure way to transfer value across borders. Another point to emphasize here is the Ethiopian fintech landscape has a lot of startups in mobile money and payment, remittance, lending and saving, and payment processing fields. This is a great progress from the Ethiopian side. So key discussion points during the discussion was that Ethiopia can learn from countries like Nigeria that have 3.5 million ATM machines and more than 200 fintech companies. So the second day, one of the thematic areas was internet infrastructure development. So the first presentation was on the critical role of internet infrastructure in fostering connectivity. So connectivity is key to digital transformation. It enables key e-services. So one of the key takeaways here is building technical communities is critical to build infrastructure. Only building the infrastructure will not suffice. Data center and inland fiber footprints in IGAD region are low, so more work is needed in this regard. Another presentation was on carrier-neutral data centers across East Africa. The interesting point here is the African data center landscape is still largely dominated by carrier-based data centers. So only 30% of the African commercial facilities are carrier neutral. So there are a lot of challenges in building carrier neutral data centers, including lack of reliable and renewable energy, lack of skilled labor, high customs and import duties, etc. However, there are opportunities also. There are opportunities, including the proliferation of local content developers, the tendency to involve public and private partnership to develop new sources of energy and to build infrastructure, and the revision of college syllabus to enable to produce digitally skilled manpower. Another presentation was community network experience in Kenya. It was a continuation of presentation made on the first day. So these are the key takeaways. Normally, one of the key challenges faced by community networks is lack of understanding of what these community networks are. And also there are challenges in deploying community networks, such as cost of equipment, operational cost, inadequate power, and cost of bandwidth. It was suggested that ISPs should support community network providers through training, and communities of practice, such as National DNS Forum, and local NGOs must be supported also for the sustainability of community networks. Another key presentation was on community-centered connectivity by Dr. Carlos Rey Monero. So the COVID-19 pandemic has shown that there is a big digital gap still expanding. So community-centered connectivity is a key to close these gaps in digital divides. And this community-centered network providers are feasible alternative solutions, because they can enter into areas that are not feasible to bigger telecom operators. So these community-centered connectivity providers can be in the form of community-owned networks or public-owned networks, like metropolitan networks, or privately owned networks. In the question and answer session, the role of local companies in fostering connectivity, the benefits of IXPs in terms of sustainability of connection quality and cost reduction were discussed, and the role of intelligent systems to manage power in data centers, and the need to create awareness on data centers and cloud services were discussed. Another thematic area of the conference was internet resilience and regional integration. One of the first presentation regarding this thematic area was the African Network Strengths by Mr. Bain from Meta. One of the key points here is the Sub-Saharan Africa's share of connectivity to Europe is showing a declining trend. It can be because of price or availability issues. However, intra-Africa connectivity is showing an increasing trend. Increasing competition is key to increase redundancy and get more capacity and ensure cross-border connectivity. The expansion of data centers, CDNs, and exchange traffic will lead to less dependency on Europe. And it's evident that carrier neutral data centers and cloud services are expanding in Africa. The other presentation was about lessons learned from the 2024 cable cuts and internet resilience in the West and East African regions. So what are the lessons learned from the West African outage? Countries that had redundant networks were largely unaffected by the big outage, and the cross-border terrestrial fiber links were used to resume, to reroute the traffic to the redundant routes. So this shows the importance of cross-border terrestrial links. Another key points are the importance of redundancy, having local content and services to improve availability of services, and another key point highlighted is building human networks as key, is equally as important as building infrastructure. During outages, we should be able to know who to call, how to get the outage fixed. The other thematic area was bridging Africa's connectivity to the next level. So one of the presentations was in the introduction of Open Fiber Data Standard. So the concept here is that the undersea cable, the network map is publicly available. However, terrestrial connections within nations, their data is not readily available. So this Open Fiber Data Standard, it's used to record this data, and it benefits governments for effective investments, improved coordination across infrastructure sectors, and reduction of physical network interruptions and distractions. So regulators must convince operators about the big picture of or the benefits of this infrastructure information, and they must adopt this open data standard. Another presentation was about satellites filling the connectivity gap. Satellites are good alternatives normally. The only problems here are the user terminal cost is high, but the connectivity cost is low. So balances can be made, but they can be okay. They can be taken as alternatives. So what's the concern regarding these LEO satellites is their 5-year lifespan. The 5-year lifespan is a concern for long-term sustainability. And there is the issue of space debris. So other than that, satellites, so the main point is satellites offer alternatives for filling the connectivity gap. Another presentation was on measuring the internet of the IGAD region. So this Cloudflare radar, it can measure, it can make multifaceted measurement of internet connectivity, including internet traffic, connectivity quality, outage, and routing. So all stakeholders in the industry should make use of this tool and analyze what's in their network and understand their connectivity status. Last but not least, of the today's thematic areas was internet in education in Ethiopia. The first presentation was on digitizing primary and secondary schools. So digitizing in schools has a lot of impacts on students. Some of these impacts are, it enables students to understand abstract concepts through simulations. It improves their language proficiency, and it can help them catch up with missed classes, especially for girls, without teacher support. For teachers, it enhances their content knowledge and pedagogical skills. But it's important to address challenges related to power supply and device affordability. The other presentation was Ethiopian strategy to use internet to improve education. This presentation mainly covered Ministry of Education's directions in involving technology to enhance education. So in the Ethiopian educational sector, there are several institutional voids, but it's thought that EdTech can fill these institutional voids. However, this EdTech has its own challenges as well, including unequal access, digital skills, and literacy gaps, and data standards and quality. But there is a digital education strategy in Ethiopia, a digital education strategy implementation plan, and its strategic focuses include enabling infrastructure and connectivity, data governance and analytics, platforms, and curriculum-aligned digital content. Another presentation was on improving Ethiopian education through technology. A key point here is we cannot wait to build one part of the digital technology and leave the others. So all components must be built in parallel. The skills, the content, the infrastructure, they must be built in parallel. The importance of localized educational content was emphasized. It's also crucial to consider offline alternatives so that students can have access to media, to the digital content, while connectivity issues are dealt with. The use of technology in education will increase student engagement and performance, improve teachers' efficiency through streamlined tools, enhance educational equity across regions, and produce future-ready workforce that's strong in digital skills. The final presentation was leveraging good internet to advance education in Kenya. It was about the role of KNET. So one of the interesting points is KNET is sustained 100% by member institutions, and it was able to connect to the large European educational resources network and make its Kenyan higher institutions benefit. It's also connected to other African global RANs for enhanced collaboration. So one of the key points highlighted here in this presentation was that focus should be on learning outcomes of students rather than just digital inputs. And it was highlighted that it's possible to have a lot of impact on students and on education as a whole by utilizing technologies such as virtual labs. So this is it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Johannes, for the brief but insightful summary of what has taken place in the last few days. For those of you who may have missed one of the parallel sessions, the recordings of the sessions is available on YouTube. So you can go to ISOC Live, ISOC Live on YouTube and revisit, because the topics covered are quite broad. As Johannes said, it includes finance, the unconnected, education, infrastructure, and so on. Dr. Dai, do we have time for any reflections from the audience, or we move on to Taye? Okay. So any reflections on what you have heard, what you have seen from the sessions in the past few days? Comments, questions? You can come to the mic over here and field your comments. You can come here if that doesn't work. Okay.
It's working now. Thank you once more, especially I think such an excellent job. In fact, I couldn't recognize the few points he made about my presentation. It's better than myself. I think I didn't attend the session, the parallel session, some of the parallel sessions. So when we were doing internet education, there was another parallel session, which was addressing things to do with what low Earth orbit solutions will do, especially for this region. And I just wanted to ask the question whether in the IGAD region, have we actually been able to embrace, or what is the reluctance in embracing the low Earth orbit, Starlink? In Kenya, we use it quite a lot, especially for the northern Kenya, closer to Ethiopia, which is very difficult to serve. But with this, you can put it either as backup or as primary. And I just wanted to know what is the status of that in the IGAD region?
Sorry, since the three presenters in that session are not here, they were online, they won't be able to respond, but maybe the floor is open to anyone here who can help answer to the question. But from my understanding, it's only Kenya that is allowing currently, Starlink to operate. So there are various reasons why countries don't accept this kind of services. So from what I understood from that session, they all said that these LEO solutions are very important because they can provide services to where other solutions cannot go. So they are important. For example, some desert areas where it will be very, very expensive to serve. However, there are also some concerns. For example, they can kill the local ecosystem because they are not here. For example, if they come to this country, then the local operators, and sometimes the small local providers can suffer. So we have to find solutions, and I hope that in these kind of conferences we can discuss the lessons learned from other countries. Kenya is, for example, doing it before others. What is your lesson? What have been the impact? What has been the good things and the bad things that other countries can learn?
Thank you, Dr. David. And to add, from my own personal experience, we had actually fielded this question to both Safaricom Ethiopia and Ethiotel in another forum some weeks back. And the comment we received was, in Ethiopia, the ARPU, the average revenue per user per month, is around 90, 100 birr, between 90 and 100 birr. In Kenya, it's maybe twice or 3 times that. So Safaricom's rep said to us, in an environment where the paying capacity of the consumer is 100 and the equipment before the subscription costs at least $20, maybe more, I'm not quite sure, in Kenya. So it may not be financially affordable yet for individuals, but with potential discussions, there may be a way around sharing or communalizing this access point. But at the moment, they said the cost individually will be higher as it stands. And they are also trying to still find a way to make it more affordable to have more people on the internet using their network. So there's many issues. I mean, some of them Dr. David mentioned. For rural and less populated areas, I think there may be a gap filling measure, but for dense areas, something like in Kenya may happen where the capacity will run out in Nairobi. But it can be not, complementary, not necessarily one replacing the other. So I think the operators can have a discussion to see where this may work.
Thank you very much. I wanted to add on what Professor Meoli has said. Initially, I was very pessimistic about the low Earth orbit solution, specifically Starlink, but I think it's proving to be a game changer, and they are responding to some of the deficiencies that they had specifically in Kenya. I think one of the major issues has been support, but other than support, personally, I have deployed 2 communities using Starlink, working with Help NGO, who are supported by Internet Society Foundation. Yesterday, I was just looking at the network monitoring system, and I noticed that the latencies have dropped from an average of 300 milliseconds to less than 10. We've been having over 300 milliseconds for the last 1 year, and I think this is a game changer. As I indicated in my presentation, one of the major costs for community networks has been because of backhaul. In the rural areas, 300 or 400 kilometers from Nairobi, you'll find that probably we pay anything from 1,000 Kenya shillings per meg, which is about $10. But when you come to the city, you probably pay about $100 for 100 meg, which is dedicated. You can see the disparity. But for Starlink, you're getting up to speeds of up to 300 megabits per second downloads and probably 100 uploads, which is very sufficient for the rural areas and significantly deals with this issue of backhaul, which is a major challenge. So I think barring any other solution, then certainly it will be a threat to the existing ecosystem. And what is happening now is that Starlink is within Kenyan data centers. We talked about data centers yesterday. They have increased the ground stations. I think the ground station in Nairobi was launched yesterday or the day before, and they're responding to the cry in the community. So now when I look at it, it makes sense to do a hybrid network with the LEO solution and then last mile fiber, because what the community was complaining was the high latencies that was preventing them from getting good videos. So I just wanted to add that it is solving a problem in the community, the regulatory issues notwithstanding. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Just to reflect, I think, with more conversations, there could be more solutions. One of the issues in the rural areas is the availability of power to charge even people's phones. So I would like to hear how they solve that issue. We are advocating certain approaches in Ethiopia to increase access. But to tell you from my last week's experience, for example, I think why more discussions are needed. I was in the Konso and Yabelo area, which is about 200 kilometers from the Kenyan border. Some of the people I met, farmers and pastoralists, told me they have a telecom signal in their area. However, they don't have somebody to sell them a SIM card from both operators. So there are some, it looks to me there are some low-hanging fruits to expand access while also working on additional solutions that increase it further.
If I may, apologies for
Yeah, please.
coming again. I think on the issue of power, again, the lessons that we've learned as community networks is you cannot depend on the national grid. And increasingly, we are now relying on solar power. And now we are having a lot of DIY kits. I also never knew before that I would put together a solar solution. But all you need is YouTube, and you can even do 3 kVA. And increasingly, we are seeing these Chinese solar products filling our markets. And where we have our towers, I've seen other players in Kenya like American Towers, where there's a base station. They actually provide space for the community to watch TV and to charge their devices. And even for us as community networks, one thing is that our stations are actually hosted by hotels in the community. Hotels, yes. If somebody has a hotel, most likely you'll find they have a standby generator or a backup solution for power. And you'll find that we exchange, provide connectivity, and they provide the infrastructure for us to use. And because they give us for free, we also provide additional access for power for the community. And just to add that specifically in Kenya, there are this, we call it M-Copper. You can buy a phone on credit, a smartphone over time, which you pay on a daily basis. You pay maybe something less than $1 per day. And the telcos are the ones actually providing these devices. So again, you find that telcos and microfinance are providing the devices, which makes it easy for community networks to get consumers for the internet services that they provide. So solutions are there, and they lie in the spirit of sharing, which is something that we as Africans do. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are useful comments, please.
Just to add a couple of things to that comment, one of the things I've heard as we've spoken to our community networks that we support is that alongside the training for connectivity, training for power supply and managing power supply is important. And not just where power is missing, but also in urban areas where often power surges can fry equipment. And we saw that recently with one of our projects in Nairobi. But just picking up as well on Barak's comment on offering power to the community, in previous work I've done, where you are building connectivity infrastructure in an off-grid area, there is a real value to understanding how you can improve the power production to provide to the community as well. And this can really support the economic sustainability of a program as well. On average, someone in an off-grid area will spend roughly 1/3 to 2/3 of their total cost of having a communications device, a phone or a laptop, on access to informal power. If you can take some of that cost out for someone, it often comes back in payments to accessing the network, accessing connectivity, etc. So a big part of reducing the affordability, but also creating new revenue streams and improving the sustainability of off-grid community networks is understanding both the power needs of the community as well as the connectivity needs, and how you can balance the offer and the pricing for that. So it is one of the things in the foundation we want to look at, how we can help train our community networks to understand not just how to build resilience into power and improve power availability in the way that Barak was describing, but also then look at whether providing power to communities is a novel way to increase the economic sustainability of those networks.
Thank you. MC was signaling me there. I think this is valued. I know there's something in the works that involves all of the things you talked about with a trial in one of these areas. Maybe I'll take his contacts and connect him to the people that may benefit from discussing with him. With that, my section of the program comes to an end, and I will hand over to Mr. Taye for the rest of the program. Thank you.